has started.
Hi, everybody. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. My name's Amy Bell. I'm a planning coordinator with the Agency of Transportation, and I'm going to be the facilitator for this event today. I also happen to be the co-manager on behalf of the Agency of Transportation for this project, along with my colleague Summer Rufero Bucosi, who is currently on maternity leave. First, I'd like to thank you for participating in the meeting, and in particular, I'd like to thank the Regional Planning Commission staff who are acting as our on-site coordinators at the various sites across the state. They have some information for you, and they should be points of contact for you folks who are participating from the various locations. The purpose of this meeting is to provide an overview of the Vermont on-road bicycle facilities plan, and to discuss that particular plan, the methodology we're using, and to receive, most importantly, and to receive your comments and feedback on this effort. We're utilizing all of the 13 interactive television sites today, and we're also utilizing the live web stream option. Can you get the agenda?
You're supposed to sign in.
So here's the agenda for today's event. Just let folks know we will be having a formal presentation from 2 individuals here, and then we will be opening it up for public comments. So just to go over some of the logistics of how this is all going to work today, the primary focus, as I mentioned before, of this meeting is to receive your comments on this on-road bicycle facility plan that the Agency of Transportation is developing, and to discuss the proposed project methodology. We're going to receive your comments today. As time permits, if we're unable to get to all your comments, we encourage you to submit your comments in writing. And there's a handout that you should have received when you came in. It's near the sign-in sheet that provides all of the information for contact information for all of us on the panel and means by which you can submit comments. So before we get to the public comment, the presentation, I just want to check in with all the various sites. So we're going to go through all of you alphabetically. So I want to check in with Bennington, and I believe it's either Peter or Mickey is covering those sites for us.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, my name's Peter Dominy. I'm an intern at the Bennington County Regional Commission.
Hey, Peter, can you tell me how many people are attending?
I don't know. Thank you.
Including myself, 2.
Okay, and has anyone indicated they'd like to speak?
Yes, Mr. Bruce Learman would.
Great. Thank you. Brattleboro.
Hi, Amy. Matt Mann.
Hi, Matt.
Hi. Bob Emler is here with myself, and he would like to testify.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Matt. Johnson. I believe we have Rob there.
Hello.
Hi, Rob.
In addition to myself, there's one other person who is not planning to speak.
Thank you, Rob. Lyndonville. Doug.
Hi, Amy. I do have one person in attendance, but she has indicated that she does not plan to testify.
Thank you. Middlebury.
Hi, Claire from Addison County Regional Planning. We have myself and 2 others. And currently, do you have anything you want to say? Throughout the meeting?
Throughout the meeting,
currently, we
possibly. It depends on what's said.
We may have one person that would like to say something.
Okay, we'll be coming back around to everyone, so if anyone should change their mind, they'll have an opportunity. Here in Montpelier, we have 3 people in addition to myself. And did you want to speak, Bill?
Perhaps, yeah. Okay.
Great. Newport, Joe.
Hi, Joe Kasperzak with NVDA. We have 3 of us, including myself, and no one plans on testifying.
Great, thank you. Randolph Center, I believe we have Sam there.
Yep. Hi, this is Sam. There's currently nobody in attendance here except for myself.
Thank you, Sam. Rutland.
Yep.
Hi, Amy. There are 2 people in attendance with me, and at least one of us will speak.
Great, thank you, Susan. Springfield, Catherine.
Hi, Amy. It's Catherine. There are 2 other people other than myself, and one intends to testify.
Great, thank you. St. Albans, Bethany.
Hi, Amy. It's Amanda. There are 2
Amanda.
people here with me. There are 2 people with me, and at least one of them plans on speaking.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. White River Junction, Rita.
Hi, Amy. There's another person here besides me, but there are no testimonies at this time.
Thank you, Rita. Chris in Williston.
Hi, Amy. There are 13 people here, including Christine and I, and 6 would like to testify.
And we win the prize.
You do.
Maybe 7.
Okay, we'll get back to you. Thanks, everybody. Really glad you could join us today. I'm going to start off with just letting you know who's here sitting at the table with me, and then you'll be hearing from a number of these folks later on. But we have Kevin Marshy to my right. He's the VTrans Deputy Chief Engineer. And then we have John Kaplan, who's all the way to my left, and John is VTrans Bicycle and Pedestrian Program Manager. And John's primarily here. He's going to be available to answer any questions that folks have. He's not actually taking a formal presenting role in this today. And then I have, to my immediate left is Erica Wygonic, and Erica is the project manager for the consulting team that is assisting us with this project. And she comes from the firm of Resource Systems Group, which is based out of White River Junction. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Kevin, and Kevin is just going to provide a brief introduction, and we will move forward with the presentations and get to your comments. Kevin.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for all of you coming out today in this lovely Vermont weather. We had some snow squalls here in Montpelier earlier. I'm not sure if you're experiencing that where you are or not, but thank you for attending. I just wanted to give a brief overview as to why VTrans thought that this project, and in particular this public feedback, was important. And really, one of the things, I guess it really starts with making sure that we're doing the right thing at the right time, in the right place, the right treatment, if you will. And one of the things that we hear from a lot with our projects around the state, whether it be a paving project, a bridge project, or even other types of intersection projects, is making sure that we're accommodating bicycle needs on our on-road facilities. And that obviously is something that we really strive to do, but what we want to do is make sure that we're prioritizing where we're putting our resources. Obviously, there's not enough money for everything we want to do around the state, whether it's bicycle needs, safety needs, bridge conditions, pavement conditions. So what we really want to do is be able to prioritize where we're putting our resources and getting the most bang for our buck. And you know, the example that I often use is looking at paving projects, something I'm fairly familiar with. And you know, one of the things that we've done over the years is obviously we get a lot of public input, and so many times that input is in the form of needing for bicycles wider shoulders, you know, a paving project and wider shoulders, which is a great idea, and we try to achieve that as much as we possibly can. But in some instances with a paving project, we try to limit the scope of those projects so that we're not impacting environmental resources or utilities or expensive right-of-way purchases or something like that. And so while we try to widen as much as we can, we have to balance that with a lot of different resources as well. And so when we're implementing those projects, it's so important for us to understand what are the highest priority bicycle routes around the state. If we can't do everything everywhere around the state, where can we identify those routes that are most important to that customer base, which is our bicyclists. And it's an important way of mode of travel for the agency, and we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I speak of paving projects, but it's many other projects as well, but it also gets to maintenance practices. Obviously, sweeping shoulders in the springtime is important, but obviously we can't sweep all shoulders all at once as soon as the snow melts. So how can we help prioritize where we're doing those, where we're performing those efforts, so that it makes the most difference to the most number of our users around the network and around the state. So this project, in the input that we're receiving, and we'll talk a little bit more in a little while about the wiki maps and the different forms of public input, but the input that we're getting is so important to help us prioritize those routes and be able to prioritize where we're spending those dollars. So that's just a little bit of background as to why we feel that this is important. Obviously, the more we can do, the better. But with the limited resources we have, we want to make sure we're doing it, getting the most bang for the buck around the state. So that's a little bit of the background. As we get further on, later on, I'm happy to take questions on some of those issues as well. But certainly thank you for taking the time to be here. And many of you probably have visited the website and put comments in there as well. So that's a little bit of background. Obviously, this is an important mode of travel for the agency, and we want to make sure we're doing the right thing. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate your remarks. Now I'm going to hand it on over to Erica Wygonic from Resource Systems Group, and she's going to give you an overview of the project, what we've done today, the schedule, additional opportunities for public input, and the overall project schedule. So, Erica, take it away.
Thanks, Amy. I want to take a minute and thank everyone for coming today and participating. We really appreciate your flexibility after we had to reschedule the earlier meeting due to the snowstorm, and I'm thankful that we were able to meet today. The snow squalls did prevent it. As has been mentioned, today we're going to share with you about the Vermont On-Road Bicycle Project, and most importantly, we're going to gather your input. The first thing I want to talk about today is the importance of this project to VTrans, and the importance to VTrans of including input from all sorts of users. And to give you a sense of that, we've highlighted the members of the community that are on the steering committee and the different organizations that are represented. This isn't a project that's just about recreational cyclists. It's not just about tourists. It's not just about commuters. It's not just about school children. The goal is to capture everyone who wants to ride a bike on a state road in Vermont. And so we've tried very hard to incorporate the opinions and make sure we're getting that perspective from a lot of different users. As has been mentioned, the overall goal of this project is to develop a comprehensive improvement plan that targets bicycle accommodations on the most important bicycle corridors on state roadways. This part of the project is phase one. We're focused right now on the first step, and the goal of this first step is to classify the roadways for bicycling. We want to use stakeholder input and quantitative analysis to identify where are the roads in the state that people most want to be bicycling on. And these might be places that people are bicycling now, or it might be places that people would like to be bicycling, but don't because of some sort of infrastructure limitation. There are three key components of this project. The first is that the purpose is to prioritize investment decisions. This has come up a number of times here already, and also in some of the public comment that we've received. There are limited finances available these days to maintain and improve infrastructure, and we want to make sure that we can do that in a way that targets those resources effectively. The method of doing that for bicycling is to identify what are the important state roadways for bicycling, and public input is a very important part of how we're choosing those roads. So how are we going to do it? We have identified 3 steps to prioritizing the roadways for bicycling in Vermont. The first is we want to identify where people want to ride and where they do ride. So this is what you might think of as demand. These are the places that There are places people are wanting to start from, there are places people want to go to, and there's connections between them. The second step is understanding where people feel comfortable riding, because that's going to affect where they want and do ride. And then the third step is to combine these two bits of information together. So the first part is to identify where people want to ride. We are doing that using 3 different sources of information. First, we're looking for clusters of destinations. This is based on how long people will typically ride to these types of destinations. Then we're gathering public input via the project map, and we'll talk about that some more. And we're also examining observed riding patterns using Strava. Strava is how do they describe it? An activity recording platform. Not me. Which many Vermont bicyclists already use, and I'll talk about that data source in a little bit of detail also. So this map illustrates all the state roads in Vermont, and I want to be clear that all state roads are being considered for this analysis. For some of the illustrations today, I'm going to show you a subset of roads, but those are just meant to make it easier for you to understand what I'm talking about. I want to be very clear that all state roads are being included as part of this analysis. So the case that I'm going to use to illustrate is this section of the highway network between Waterbury and Stowe, basically, Route 100. And if we first look at looking for clusters of destinations, this map illustrates employment locations and the density of employment locations within a 2-mile buffer. This is one way that we're looking at the typical trip length for a particular type of destination. Many people would be willing to ride 2 miles to work if they could, if the facilities were adequate for that travel pattern. So this is one example of how we're doing this. We're doing this sort of analysis for many different types of destinations. We're looking at homes, we're looking at employment and jobs, so commuters. We're looking at shopping, if you want to use bicycles as a form of transportation, serving a transportation need to go shopping. For schools, we're looking for clusters of schools and how those overlap with employment and shopping locations. If you want to use bicycling for the last mile of a trip to a transit service, that's something that we're considering. We're also looking at things like libraries and trails, and by no means is this list comprehensive. The second way we're considering where Vermonters want to ride is by gathering public input via the project map. This is a web-based map. I'll talk about it in fairly extensive detail later on in this presentation, but it's a way that anyone in the state, and really anyone outside of the state, as long as they access the website, can comment on specific routes or specific spots within the routes of places that they like to ride, places that they don't like to ride, and reasons why they do and do not like to ride in those places. In addition to adding your own comments, you can agree or disagree with other people's comments, which allows for very fast, you can input your opinions quickly if you can agree with someone else's data that's already been added. The third method we're using to identify where Vermonters want to ride is by looking at data that shows where they are riding. Strava is an app that people can install on their phone or other GPS device, and it tracks when and where people ride. VTrans has obtained a year of Strava data, which we are using to understand where Vermonters ride. And so it gives us a total number of trips on various locations for various times of day throughout the state. We can combine this data with the comments about where people want to ride, where people do ride, and where we expect people to ride to calibrate some of the other data sources. The second way we will prioritize the roadways is looking at places that people feel comfortable riding and looking at places people don't feel comfortable riding. We'll go through this process using 3 different sources of data. We'll use the public input map that I've already discussed, use the Strava data that we've already discussed, and will also evaluate the infrastructure using the bicycle level of service analysis. The bicycle level of service is an analysis that describes the suitability of the infrastructure for bicycle riding. It takes into account a number of different features, and those factors all describe aspects of the roadway network that help make a road more or less comfortable for bicycle riding, including things like lane width and shoulder width, so how much space you have for riding, what the vehicle volume is and percentage of trucks, as well as their speed, average speed, which gives a sense of how much risk you might feel when you're riding on those roads, and then pavement condition. Certainly pavement condition affects how comfortable it is to ride. All of those things go into the calculation, and the result is a color-coded ranking of the different roadway network, of the different roadway segments within the network. A is a great place to ride. Everyone would feel comfortable riding there. E's and F's describe places that no one would really feel comfortable riding. The last step of the analysis is combining the two other points of information, looking at where people want to ride, looking where people feel comfortable riding, and then prioritizing the roads using both of those data points. So we will score all of the roads in the state for their desirability and for their comfort, and then we'll combine those two scores. In the end, we will arrive at roughly 4 different categories that we'll use to prioritize the roads in the state, from, as described in this graphic, very appealing to unappealing. And all of the roads in the state, as illustrated on this map, will be scored on one of these prioritization levels. Every segment of every state road will have some sort of prioritization ranging from something like very appealing all the way down to unappealing. That's a little bit about how we're going to do the analysis that supports this project, but there's a couple other things I want to cover today that talk about our project schedule, opportunities for input, and as I mentioned before, more detail about the project map. So what is hopefully on everyone's screen right now is the project schedule. We have kicked off the project, gathered quite a wide range of data that we're compiling right now, and we're right in the middle of the public outreach, the first public outreach part of this effort. Today is our first public outreach meeting. After gathering your input today, we'll combine that with the other data that we've gathered, and we will develop a preliminary prioritization of the roadway network. We'll then bring the results of that analysis back to you at our second public meeting, which will be on April 30th of 2015. I think that's the first time I've said 2015 out loud. April 30th is a Thursday. That will be a night meeting from 6 to 8 p.m. We will be using all of the VIT facility sites again. We will also be web streaming again, so you should be able to come back to where you are right now to participate. I'm going to take a moment right now to pause so everyone can put that in their calendars. It's fun to be able to see everyone at the VIT sites and see you all putting this in your calendar. We've talked quite a bit today about how important public input is to this project. We can do all the data analysis we want, but if it doesn't reflect what people in Vermont really want for bicycling in the state, then that doesn't really help us. So we're really, really hoping to gather as much public input as we can. I want to thank everyone who is participating this afternoon, who has already emailed the project team or has entered their opinions into the project map. I strongly encourage everyone to share your thoughts with us, either using the project map or via our project email address. Both of those comment avenues. I don't know if that's the way to describe them, but they will both be receiving comments through February 14th. On the screen now, there is the website for the project website. From the project website, you can get all the information about our next public meeting, various public documents about the project, a link to the project map where you can add your comments, and information about our email address. If you have any questions or comments that don't get covered tonight, or today, I guess it's still daytime, I really encourage you to email us or to add data to that project map. So speaking of the project map, this is what the project map looks like. I'd like to take a little bit of time and give an introduction to how to interact with the project map. I do a live demo, but I think that's just one degree of technology too many for a statewide broadcast of a public meeting. So instead I took a lot of screenshots, and hopefully it's enough to give you a sense of how to interact with the map. If you go to the website, this isn't actually what the project map looks like anymore. It now looks like this. A lot of people in and outside of Vermont have commented and entered their opinions into the map. This can be fairly overwhelming if you're trying to add data. So you can go up to the left-hand side where it says About and Help and turn off other people's input and get back to the clean map. But if you don't have a lot of time, you can just look at the comments that other people have already entered and simply like or dislike the comments that have already been entered. Many Vermonters have already added their feedback, and I want to thank everyone who has, and I want to encourage anyone who hasn't to go to the map and add your data. Nearly 3,000 points, lines, likes, and dislikes have been entered, and over 1,600 unique IP addresses have been added. That's, I think, really impressive participation rate given how many people live in this state. We're a small state and people are active, and I'm really thankful for that because it's making this project better. If you haven't gone to the map yet, allow me to share with you a little bit on how to do so. If you go to the map, there's two different types of information that you can add. You can add information about routes that you ride, like to ride, or you'd like to ride, but it needs some improvement. And you can also add information about points, specific destinations that you do ride to or you would ride to. The other type of point you can add is if somewhere is a particularly difficult bicycling location. So I'm first going to go over how you would add data regarding routes. So as is circled on the map, there the routes section is everything. I think I was consistent about this. Every place that you would click is circled in orange to highlight where you would actually click with your mouse. So you'd click on the routes tab, and then this menu pops up, and you pick one of the options. You can pick a place that you want to comment a route that you do ride, a route that you ride but could be improved, or a route that you really don't use because it needs so much improvement. So there's 3 different types of routes, and you pick one of them, and then you add your data. After you select your option, then you zoom in on the place that you want to add your data, and you click on anywhere to start drawing a line. You keep clicking on points along the roadway, and it will continue to add points, and it will snap to the road yourself. You don't have to add too many points to make it snap to the roadway in question. After you've clicked the entire length of either the to and from route or a circle, a loop path that you'd like to document, you double click, you click on the last point, and that will finish your segment. Again, this is the legend of the different sorts of routes that you can add. The other type of information you can add are points. I've mentioned this already. If you click on the points section, the following menu shows up. where you can select where your home is, which is important in that it describes how far away from other destinations that you would be willing to ride. And then we have 4 categories of riding destinations that you can add. A play destination, so any sort of recreation, entertainment, anything that would fall into that category. A learning center is another type of destination, whether that's a school, a library, something like that. A work destination, that would fall into a commute sort of route, if you a place that you ride to as part of some sort of work trip. And then the last destination type we include is a shopping locale, so somewhere you would go for any sort of commerce. And maybe you go to the bank, and that's not technically shopping, but that would be the same idea as somewhere you go to conduct personal business. The last point option you can select is a difficult biking location. So if there's a place that you ride and everywhere on your route is great, but there's one particular spot where there's a narrow bridge, or the shoulder disappears, or you always get run over by a car, not actually run over, but people come close to you, that's a great place to flag and let us know that that's somewhere that we should pay particular attention to. So after you click a destination type, you can add a comment describing the destination. So if you're not sure if something should fall under a play category or a work category, pick one of them and just add in the comment field what it actually is. And then if it turns out that we would categorize it differently, we can fix that later. I mentioned again, this is a close-up of the different types of points that you can comment on. The last way to interact with the map is to add a comment or agree or disagree with someone else's comment. So if someone has already drawn in the route that you were about to draw in, no need to draw it in again. That you are welcome to, but you wouldn't need to. All you would need to do is agree or disagree, or you can abstain if you don't strongly agree or strongly disagree with how the person has characterized the route, but you can still add a comment. You can both agree, disagree, or disagree and add a comment. Feel free to do that. And you can see here that the route, someone has already labeled this a route I like to bike, and 2 people have added comments. It's a beautiful road. This is a big climb, but it has lovely views from the top. Spots could use repaving. So, you don't, I think those are nicely succinct comments. They're helpful, they're actionable, and they tell us things that will help us with this project. That is what I'd like to share with you about the project. This slide reminds you of all the different ways that you can reach out. If we welcome your input today. We do have some time constraints about how many people can give formal testimony today, but we want as much testimony and input as we can. So there are countless well, not countless, but there are, you can count them, but it's a lot of ways that you can get a hold of our project team and share anything that you don't feel comfortable sharing today or don't have time to share today. You can call us. We welcome your phone calls. You can send us a letter. We'll read your letters. The address is here on the screen, and we'll have this address displayed once this presentation concludes. The website for the project is here on the screen. You can go there, and there's direct access to the project map where you can add your comments. And then this is our project email account. We monitor that email account all the time. We check it pretty much every day. We try and get back to people within a day or two. Sometimes it takes us a little bit more time if your comment is particularly nuanced, but we do try and respond pretty promptly and are recording everything that comes in there so we can summarize it later. That's a great way to add input. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Amy. And right.
Thanks, Erica. Before we begin the formal public comment period, I just want to give you a little bit of background on how we're going to do this. When we set these hearings up, we have no way of knowing how many of you will be out there, so we do have a few, some structure to it to try to make the most of the use of your time. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to each site in alphabetical order, much like I did at the very beginning of this. We'll receive comments from 2 presenters or 2 speakers at each location. And then we're going to allow presenters up to 2 minutes. You don't have to use 2 minutes, but if you could keep your comments to 2 minutes, we'd appreciate it. And then we'll move on to the next site. And we're going to afford the folks who are on the web stream, you have a chat feature, and you are welcome to submit comments. We'll also refer to the web stream to receive a couple of comments and or questions as well. We're going to continue around to all the sites until all the comments are either received or we reach 3:55 p.m. Just a reminder, if we don't get to your comments today, we really encourage you to go to any of the sites, any of the various ways to contact us and provide us those comments in writing. And I apologize if we don't get to you, but I'm hopeful, given what we at least found out from the initial roundabout, I think we've got plenty of time to get to everyone today. So I just want to give you a couple of reminders. The primary purpose of this meeting is to receive your comments regarding the project and the proposed methodology that you've just heard about. So in order to maximize and be respectful of your time and the other participants, if you have questions related to topics beyond the current project, we encourage you to submit those in writing so that we can more adequately respond following the meeting. Please refer again to the handout for the necessary contact information and how to submit those questions to us. I'd also like to ask everyone if you could just please introduce yourself when you go to present, so that we, number one, have an accounting for the record, but also so other participants know who they're hearing from. And so now we're going to begin the public comment period by starting in Bennington. I believe there are two folks who would like to testify in Bennington.
Yeah, it's Peter Dominy from the Bennington County Regional Commission.
Peter.
We have a lot of good projects in planning, but they're probably a couple years out from anything happening. But in Bennington, I think Route 67A, the highway, is probably our biggest priority. It connects the village of North Bennington to downtown Bennington, and it's really the only main road that you can take. All the main grocery stores and things are along that road, and it's just in pretty terrible shape. And daily we see people walking or riding their bikes, along the gutters, and it's pretty dangerous. So I think that would probably be our most important priority here.
Thanks,
Bruce?
Peter.
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Bruce Lehrman. I live in North Bennington. I would like to second what Peter has said. It's Vermont 67A, particularly the section between the entrance of Bennington College and Beaumont Avenue. It has the potential for the greatest bicycle usage, I think. There's a community at Bennington College that's very interested in using bicycles more for commuting to town and to the business centers located along the route. But they're intimidated. It's a 4-lane section of road with no shoulders, so you have to ride in the lane in a 40-mile-an-hour speed zone section. There is also much planning, I know, going on right now for Northside Drive rebuilding, and I think it's very important that bicycles be considered here. And of course, there's been discussion of roundabouts, 2 or 3 locations there. I strongly support that because I think they're an excellent choice and improve bicycle access. But we really have a combination here of a population that wants to use the road, a lot of facilities for which there would be access with this one correction. And it would be an opportunity to solve a problem that's really been discussed here for 3 decades. And I'd like to see what could be done. I'm just emphasizing that as the highest priority in the Bennington area.
Thank you, Bruce. We'll go to Brattleboro. I think we have a couple people in Brattleboro who'd like to speak.
Bob Imler from Brattleboro. I wish I'd known about the map before I came to the meeting, but there's a group here in Brattleboro that goes up to St. Albans and rides from St. Albans back to Brattleboro in a couple days. And we're always surprised at the poor condition of the pavement on Route 100 through the Matta River Valley. And maybe it was repaved, last summer, and I'm not aware of it, but that's one thing. The other area is Route 9 between Brattleboro and Wilmington. I find that very dangerous, and I don't ride that very often. And that's it.
Thank you, Bob. Matt, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Just to comment on the presentation and specifically the factors that are being taken into consideration, like the shoulder width and the lane width. And I was curious if the steepness of the slope or the grade was being considered as well as one of those factors.
I don't believe the steepness of the slope is one of those factors. That is more of a personal opinion, whether you're trying to ride for commuting purposes or whether you're trying to intentionally go up steep slopes.
Yeah, I mean, when the question's asked, is it comfortable or not to ride? Obviously, a flatter grade would be more comfortable than a steep one, if for many riders. But I understand your point. We have a map at our regional planning commission that is a bike ped map, and that the steepness of the grade has been called upon as something that helps out people that are either planning a bike ride or whether or not they want to commute or other reasons in terms of giving them a heads up as to what exactly their ride could be. Challenging, not challenging.
Yeah, I agree. It's certainly an important factor. It's not something that is controllable or that we're trying to understand what the infrastructure changes can be made, or anything we have control over in terms of the infrastructure is really what we're considering in terms of comfort for this particular project. But it certainly does affect where people would want to ride. I agree with that for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
That's it. Yep.
We'll go to Johnson next, and I know in our initial run around there was no one who wanted to comment, but I want to double check, make sure there haven't been other folks who have arrived. Rob?
Hi. No comments, but I have just a quick question on the Strava data that was mentioned that'll be collected. What year will be utilized?
If I remember correctly, and David is going to nod at me because he's the one who's been in it most recently, I believe it's September 2012 to August 2013, give or take a month. Something like that.
Thanks, Rob.
It's the most recent year we could get data for.
Thank you.
We'll go to Lyndonville next. Doug?
Hi, Amy. We still have no comments in Lyndonville.
Okay, thanks. Got Middlebury next. Claire?
I think we have one question.
Yes, Adam Franco here in Middlebury. I have two comments, one on some particular local roads that are of issue. In Middlebury, one of our primary thoroughfares is US 7 as it comes through town. And while the highway on either side of town is wide-shouldered and heavy traffic, but suitable for bicycling, as it comes into the village, the shoulders disappear. There are drainage grates in the 1.5 to 2 foot wide shoulder, and also numerous problems with the shoulder disappearing into right turn lanes in multi-lane turning intersections, which pretty much make the route terrifying for even competent cyclists. So that's really our major problem in town. Also, Vermont 125 west of the village was recently repaved, I believe, this summer. However, it has no shoulder and is a popular running and cycling route and has some very blind hills that make it a very dangerous spot. But those are our local issues that I've added to the map. Just wanted to reiterate those. My second comment is I'm hoping that the artifacts from this project with the classification of roads and other data can be made publicly available in the future. So that way, those of us who are encountering issues can see the classification the state has applied to a segment of roadway and either know who to contact or also maybe be able to see mitigating factors such as just the inability to widen a particular section, which means maybe we should focus our efforts elsewhere in advocacy.
Great.
Thanks,
Adam. Our plan is to provide this information publicly upon completion, so I think we will have what you want. Let's go next here in Montpelier. We have one person currently who'd like to speak.
Yes, hi. This is Bill Merrilees, and I'm on the Montpelier Bicycle Advisory Committee. And firstly, I'd like to say this is very exciting, this project you guys are doing, and I think it's a great thing for folks in local communities who are really trying to, like Montpelier, who are trying to make their communities more bike friendly. But then once you hit the line of the community and you want to go somewhere else, there's the big gap. So it feels like this is a real need that you're addressing. To piggyback on just quickly on that comment made by the gentleman in Middlebury, that I think that information that'll be made public about the classification, the level of service and stuff on those roads would be great to interface that with the next edition of the statewide bike map. Although you've probably thought of that stuff already. In terms of specific roads out of Montpelier, north and south out of Montpelier, Route 12 is very problematic, as anyone that lives around here would know. Route 12 going north serves some destinations, several villages. The Wrightsville Recreation Area is a very key destination for other forms of healthy physical activity and recreation. And Route 12 is just pretty skinny from the Montpelier town line to Wrightsville. The other thing to consider, I know you're factoring in recreational riding and fitness riding, and I think that's awesome. That section of Route 12 would help to complete a very nice and otherwise pretty nice ride from Montpelier all the way up to well, I was going to say Elmore, but now it's Morrisville because of the repaving there. And, a traditional long distance 75 mile loop that would go from Montpelier up through Elmore and Morrisville and then down across the map that was shown earlier by Erica, Stowe, Waterbury, and then around. That's a great loop. That Route 12 improvement would really help that. And then the other one, of course, is Route 12 or Route 2 between Waterbury and Middlesex, which is really nasty. If I have time, I'd like to say a little more. Going south out of.
I'm going to let you continue, but you've exceeded 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll be quick. Going south out of Montpelier, as you know, down to Northfield, super dangerous along some spots with retaining walls and absolutely no shoulder. I hope that you will factor in completing existing networks like that 70-mile route I mentioned, and I'm thinking the Cross Vermont Trail going east-west, and then the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail going east-west, just a little bit to the north. If you're looking at combining those two into one huge loop, and there's a lot of those big loops up in Quebec that are fantastic and draw in tourists, I hope you'll look at those connectors. Some of them may be on state roads.
What was the second one that you mentioned?
The connecting the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail and the Cross Vermont Trail. And one other thing I hope you'll factor in is the completing is level of readiness in local communities to kind of funnel into some of these state roads and communities that have identified those needs. I'm sure you'll be hearing from them. At Montpelier certainly is banking on some improvements going out of town. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Anyone else in Montpelier wish to speak? We're good?
I've been working. May I?
Can you come to the front mic if you would? Sorry.
Can
you identify yourself?
Brenda.
for it.
I live down in West Berlin, and as he was saying, it's very dangerous to ride from West Berlin just into Northfield because of the retaining walls and crash rails. I have been getting some information together to ask the town to lower the speed limit through there. The speed limit through that retaining wall and that crash rail going into Northfield Falls is 50 miles an hour. You don't have any place to go if you're walking or on a bicycle. So I'd like to see that area get slowed down to 35, and of course it does have to go through the town. You go into the falls at 35, you come through the wall on the other side, instead of speeding it up to 50, just keep it going slow right straight through. And the shoulders and stuff, like he was saying, to Montpelier and everything are atrocious. But another thing I want to bring up is I heard somewhere where people were thinking of making a registration, people that ride bikes pay, registration to help pay for some of these improvements. And I'd like to see bicycle riding stay, something you jump on your bike and go. But I think most people that do ride and the younger generation are going to want to pay to keep these improvements up. So I'm more than willing to pay.
Thank you, Brenda. So we'll go to Newport next, and I see we have at least one person in Newport who'd like to speak.
Yes, Amy, we have Colleen here who'd like to speak.
Great.
Hi, my name is Colleen. I am new to the Vermont Department of Health to this aspect, and so I'm here learning. So I have a question, actually, and it may be very basic, but if you could help me understand, that would be great. What are the challenges to making bike ped accessibility standard for all new road constructions or repaving? We've had two recent projects here. We had the Coventry Road here in Newport, as well as Route 111 from Island Pond to Derby, recently repaved. And so I'm just curious, what are the specific barriers that prevent all new projects from being bike ped compatible?
We're going to have Kevin answer that or respond.
Sure. I'll do my best. In the intro, I alluded to it a little bit in terms of kind of the scope of the project and how quickly we can actually implement a project. You mentioned 111, which was paved, I believe last summer, was a real thin pavement treatment. And really it's about the scope of the project, and we obviously, as I mentioned in the beginning, we attempt to incorporate bicycle improvements as much as we can in our projects. The scope of using that project as an example was a very thin overlay, was to just resurface a low volume road. And when we start talking about, and I have some familiarity with that corridor, when you start talking about widening, and there are not a lot of shoulders up there, admittedly, you start getting into pushing slopes out, which leads you to environmental impacts, whether it be wetlands or streams or what have you. And it's not in all cases, but certainly we start to get into those types of impacts. And you also get into right-of-way impacts and other things that I mentioned at the beginning. What that does, and we are a state agency, but we have to follow state permitting and federal permitting regulations and processes. What that does is it takes the ability for us to develop a project in, between a 12 and 24 month from the time we begin to the time we implement. That can add years and years to that type of project. So there's a timing component to it, but there's also a cost component to it. When we're talking about resurfacing, especially on a lot of our low volume roads, we're looking at being able to resurface the roads, which is good for all users of the road to be able to resurface those lanes. We're looking at costs with the thin treatment we did up on 111 last summer. We're looking at, I'll say, between $150,000 and maybe $250,000 per mile to treat that. When we're talking about adding width on shoulders, we're looking more in the $750,000 to $1 million per mile treatment. So there's a cost component to it, and obviously that's why we're here, because we want to find out where those priority routes are, so that when we are resurfacing our highways, we're looking at those priority routes and we're trying to make those investments where we get the most bang for our buck.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's next go on to, I believe we're on to Randolph Center. Sam, do we have anybody to speak? No. Great. Thank you, Sam. We'll then go on to Rutland. Susan, I believe you have a couple people who are interested in speaking.
Go ahead. Go for it. I'll go after you.
Hi, I'm Dick Horner. I'm the Killington Town Planner. And our concern is with Vermont 100 North between basically Route 4 and Pittsfield. We're doing some extensive collaboration with the U.S. Forest Service to put some bike trails, off-bike trails around the Gifford Woods, Kent Pond area. And we also get a significant number of riders coming down from the Killington Resort that are passing through that area. That section of 100 North gets extensive use by bike riders. The shoulders are very narrow and twisty, and there's just really not a lot of room for the bikes with the heavy truck traffic and vehicle traffic that road gets. So we would like to see that road improved with wider shoulders and be a little bit more bike compatible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Anyone else in Rutland?
I'm Shelley Lutz. I'm just a local volunteer and do a lot of cycling in the region. Retired from UPS, and the section that Dick Horner's talking about was horrible driving a package car on it if there's cyclists on it. But a couple points I'd like to make are rumble strips on white lines. The state, especially if it's an avid cyclist route, rumble strips are horrible on a road bike. They're dangerous to a road bike. Sweeping the shoulders in the springtime. I believe there was problems with one of the street sweepers this spring, but Business Route 4 in Center Rutland. That's a huge connecting route for us to a lot of our rides in this area. And getting that swept off first thing in the spring would be very advantageous. And whoever put your interactive map together for those bike routes, that was pretty cool. I like that. That's it.
Thanks, Shelley. So I think next we're on to Springfield. Anyone in Springfield who'd like to speak? Looks like we might have at least one person.
Yeah, you should be able to.
My name is Eric. I live and ride around Springfield, and there are a number of problems in the area, many of which are located on state roads. In particular, I would point to, along Route 131 between Proctorsville and Downers Four Corners, I recall that in some places the edge of the pavement is very bad. There's debris, there's sand that washes down from people's driveways. There are even trees and bushes that reach out into the bicycle lane and try to grab the glasses off your face and make you swerve into the traveled lane. So a little bit of cleanup along the right-hand edge of the road would be a huge plus. Route 5 south from Springfield toward Bellows Falls was recently repaved, and it's very, very nice to ride on. And the fog line has not yet been painted along the right-hand side. So when that fog line is painted, I would suggest that it be moved inboard 18 inches or 20 inches to provide a bike lane for us. And that, by the way, would be a very inexpensive way to create a bike lane on an existing road, simply by moving that fog line inward. I can point to at least 3 catch basins that I know of in the Springfield area, one of which for sure is on a state road, where the grate is aligned improperly so that somebody riding a road bike with very narrow tires could experience a wheel trap there. And in some cases, I hope it's as simple as lifting the cover and turning it around. But I'm not sure that that's applicable in all cases, because I think some of those storm grates are rectangular and they were simply installed incorrectly. There is a good existing bike lane that goes east from Springfield Center to the Connecticut River. But the lines need to be repainted, and the little bicycle symbol that's painted on the road needs to be replaced, so the drivers are reminded that we do have already a little bit of space set aside for us.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And could we get your name? We missed it when you first came on. We didn't hear your name.
My name is Eric Bye, B-Y-E.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. Anyone else in Springfield? All right, we're on to St. Albans. Amanda, do you have anybody?
Yes, we have 2 people.
Great.
Hi, my name is Jane Powell, I just wanted to comment on the Strava. Am I correct that it's 2012 and 2013 data that's going to be used for Strava?
That is our recollection.
Okay, I'm just curious if there's going to be any more.
No, 2013 to 2014. Sorry, I was off by a year.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's a little bit more up to date. I was concerned because I know that there's been a lot of improvements that have been done on the roads. And so there will be people using different roads now than we're using back then, just due to the conditions of the roads. So, yeah, that was my question, was there going to be any more up-to-date data that was going to be taken off of Strava? So if it's 2014, that's pretty up-to-date.
I forgot to roll over the years in my head when I was sorry.
That's okay.
Whatever ended in roughly the most recent September, the year that preceded the most recent September.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you. We have another comment from St. Albans.
Yes, hi, my name is Michael Jansen from St. Albans, and I want to thank you for your efforts here in the Vermont Road Bike Project. It's important to a lot of us in the state, as well as outside, as well as having the ability to attract tourists to the state for our bicycling, because we have a beautiful state, and it's important to do that. I myself, just in the St. Albans area, just to give you a little bit of an idea, I help just doing rides on weekends with another gentleman, and we have over 100 individual emails just from cyclists in the Franklin County area. So that gives you just a small idea of the numbers of cyclists that want to ride. The other thing I wanted to point out in terms of roads that are important to us, and I think I'll choose 2 to start with, and that is the roads from St. Albans City to the lake. There are 2 very important roads. That's Route 36 and Route 38. It's between 3 and 6 miles from the city to the lake, and a lot of people, including children and families and recreational riders, want to use that road, but both of those roads are pretty terrible in certain sections in particular. Route 38, the Newton Road, is used for a variety of rides, getting to the lake as well as getting to the county road to go to Swanton. And it's a terrible road with 50-mile-an-hour speed limits, very narrow lanes, and it always seems to be in pretty rough shape, even though this fall, after the summer season, they did a little bit of patchwork on it, which is helpful. But those are 2 very important roads for cyclists and very dangerous roads for them to ride on in the narrow sections. The other 2 roads that are really important, I believe, are Route 105 from St. Albans to Enosburg, because even though we try to avoid it, there are sections of that road where you can't avoid, because you need to get to other roads that take you off the main highway. And you just can't help it. To get to Fairfield Pond from St. Albans, you have to go on Route 105. To get to Enosburg, we can take Route 78 through Highgate, and then you end up on probably 5, 6, 7 miles of Route 105. And that road is high traffic, fast, and is just a danger. We don't like being on there, but sometimes you can't help it. So I would really concentrate on looking at Route 105 from St. Albans to Enosburg.
Michael, your 2 minutes are up, but you said you had one more route, so I'm going to let you talk about your one more route.
All right, and the other route is Route 78 from Swanton to Highgate. And I know there's been some improvement made on that road, but that's a road which we do ride on a lot. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So next is White River Junction. Rita, do we have anyone who would like to speak?
There's nobody for testimony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rhonda Williston, you have quite a few people who'd like to speak, so we'll get right to you. Chris.
Yes, we have our first round of participants here.
Thank you for letting me go early. My name's Rick Hubbard, and I support everything you're attempting to do here, but I have a concern, and it's to put what we're doing in the broader context of how it marries to overall goals and policies in Vermont. In Vermont, all motorists and all bicyclists have the right and obligation to use our state highways. We have 2,800 and change miles. As we push to improve them, we're making progress. But how do we know we ever get there if we haven't set a goal as to how soon we're going to get there? If we do 28 miles a year, it'll take us a full century to make progress. And I don't see anything that talks about that in what we're doing so far. Are there plans to set a goal within VTrans? Is it important to actually make all the roads safe for bicyclists and pedestrians over time? We all know you have to prioritize it. And do you have the legislative support beyond just the vague concept of complete streets? Do you have the support to do this?
Kevin, do you want to respond just quickly?
Sure, I'll try. There's a lot of pieces to that. In terms of, I guess I'll start off with, do we have a plan or do we have goals in terms of when we're going to get there? I think that this study is really the first piece of that. Going back to the beginning, we want to prioritize those routes so that we can look at those most important corridors. And once we get there and we understand what the mileage is, future phases of this process once we get past the public input piece, is the gap analysis and looking at those top priority corridors and looking to where those improvements will be so we can get a better idea on what those costs would be and what that timeline would be. So at this point, do we have a plan to say we're going to be able to fund and make all the improvements on the priority one roads in X amount of time? No, we're not there yet because frankly we just don't know what the cost of that would be. However, that is, that's the path that we're heading down, and these are the early phases of that. There was a couple of other questions there in terms of support, and I guess I would say, kind of broadly, we do have the support for this project within the administration, and we have a lot of support at the legislative level as well when it comes to all of the modes of transportation, but bike and ped in particular. So we do have support for this type of initiative. We have support and funding for this project, which is indicative of that. But do we have a concrete plan laid out on when we're going to get there and how much it'll cost? We're not there yet, but we're headed in that direction.
Thanks, Kevin. We have another commenter from Williston.
Hi, my name is Sean Foley. I'm a Essex resident, and I first want to applaud what you're doing, in particular about the route safety concerning cyclists. I was hit by a car a little over a year ago on my bicycle. I've since then have gotten on the Essex Trails Committee just to have some personal input in the process, and that's why I'm here today as well. I think Essex represents a really important geographical area because it kind of transitions, or it's a threshold between the more populated and developed area of Chittenden County and more rural regions. And I think in the populated areas, you have cyclists who want to get out to the rural regions, both in an east-west and a north-south direction. There are problems with getting through the Essex area, and especially as you approach Essex Junction itself. So from Winooski to Essex, obviously you have Route 15. Those problems are pretty obvious. There's a lot of businesses there. There's 4-lane traffic there, and I think there's already some plans to make improvements there. And I do know a lot of cyclists who commute on that. But also, as you continue on through Essex Junction, if you go easterly, you're looking on River Road or Route 15, continuing on into some rural areas that cyclists like to use. Neither one of those really is very adequate. They're both particularly dangerous in areas, especially River Road with the guardrails, the lack of shoulder, the high volume of traffic, and it happens to be a commuter route for vehicles. So those people are eager to get to and from work and are moving at a pretty rapid pace. As you go north out of Essex Junction, you have Route 2A, and that has many of the same problems. A lot of twists and turns, blind corners, tight guardrails, no shoulder, poor road conditions. So again, I think it's an important area because of the bicycle population that's eager to use it and get through it, and doesn't have a good route either east-west or north-south through that area. And if I have more time, I just have a couple quick other comments. I don't know all the talk about Strava. I know people in the cycling community. There's a bunch who do use it and a bunch that don't. And I just want to say, does Strava represent a particular demographic within the cycling community? Do you find that to be true? And if so, are you making adjustments? Because it doesn't necessarily represent the entire cycling community. That would just be my caution about that. And then also, it was made clear earlier comments about the difference between having to just resurface a road as opposed to making more substantial improvements, widening the road. That brings up the question of restriping, which I would think would be the most effective. I don't know whether or not that approach is effective overall for safety, and how extensive a component that is in your bike plan. Just restriping to get to as many areas as possible with the limited budget.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. We will come back to you in Williston shortly, but I need to go to the web stream first. David, do you have any questions that you would like to share with us?
Yes, there are a couple of questions. One general question isn't really specific to anything, is just, will these slides be made available and put up on the website at the end of this? Because they were hard to read for people on the web.
Yes, the presentation will be available on the website at the address that you all have on the agency's webpage. It could be later today or first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay, so the first question is just a road of concern. US 5 connects Derby to Newport. It's an important artery connecting over 9,000 people. It's a crucial artery that connects two thriving and mutually dependent communities. The low socioeconomic status population uses it regularly on foot at great risk, many times pushing baby strollers in all weather conditions, and there is no sufficient shoulder leap of faith to walk or cycle on it, and it connects many vital services.
Right.
The second one is asking, whatever plans and changes occur, they must be implemented in tandem with all towns impacted. I'm very happy that already mentioned today is the need for cleaning off bike paths on roadways. As far as I know, the town of Berlin did not clean either the Barry-Montpelier Road section or the Berlin Street extension section even once this year. As a 72-year-old senior, I enjoy taking my bike on the GMTA bus to Barry and then cycling home or vice versa. I had to stop doing this as it became too dangerous due to large sand and gravel deposits, which sometimes took the entire portion of the shoulder. It wasn't designated as a bike path, but it was quite a bit deteriorated. And coming from the hospital is also a large curve that should be that crosses the Barry City line and should be looked at. It had lots of broken up chunks of asphalt and had endangered cyclists traveling down at considerable speed. And it also had mentioned about the storm drains, which was talked about earlier, because they are misaligned.
Great. Thanks, David. I'm going to quickly go back through Bennington. Do you have anyone who'd like to speak?
If there is time, I have two more things that I'd like to discuss. I did have an opportunity to comment earlier, so if there's time, I'd like to cover two.
How about we come back to you? If you don't
That'll be
mind.
fine.
Okay. Brattleboro.
Nothing right now.
Okay, thank you. Johnson. Rob?
All set here. No further comments.
Lyndonville.
We have no comments. Thank you, Amy.
Middlebury. Claire.
I had a quick question. I was just wondering how or if age and ability would be incorporated into the analysis.
I mentioned earlier, this is Erica Waganek for RSG. We're supporting VTrans in this. I mentioned how we are looking at typical travel lengths and the sorts of distances people ride to particular uses. So the distance that someone would ride to a school is different than the distance someone would ride on an intense training ride, for example. And so that's one way that that's being accounted for. When we look at the bicycle level of service, there are ways that that can be weighted to account for certain rider classes need higher levels of service and better conditions to feel comfortable riding. So you wouldn't send a fifth grader riding on a road that has 1.5 foot shoulders with lots of trucks and high speeds. Someone who is a very intense recreational rider might feel comfortable in that environment, but you would never send a 10-year-old down that. And so if something is going to be suitable to connect to a school, we want it something that has wide shoulders, low travel speeds, lower traffic volumes, and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. Montpelier, do we have anyone else? All right, we'll move on. Newport.
All set, Amy. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Randolph Center. Sam, are you still in Randolph Center? I am. Can you hear me? Well, they are offline. We'll move on to Rutland. Susan. Yes.
Hi.
Anyone else?
My name is. Oh, yep.
Go for it.
I'm Kimberly Griffin from the Rutland Area Physical Activity Coalition. And one concern I have, it was just mentioned about the low SES population that is all over Vermont, but we do have quite a large population in Rutland who walks or bikes on our roadways. Is there a plan in place to be able to contact them? They're not necessarily using Strava. Can there be like something through the schools, through Safe Routes to School, or like what is kind of the plan to be in touch with that population?
We are very conscious of bicycling being serving different purposes for different people. We've done our best to reach out. A lot of the ways that we have to interface with the project are online, but to account for that, we are distributing a lot of information through the library system, and this information is posted in the libraries. Most libraries do have internet access, and the website should be accessible in those library locations. And that we thought was the best and most efficient way to try and reach out to people who don't have home internet access, for example. And we also have reached out to all the transit providers and have asked them to display this information on their buses and share it with their riders, especially those who show up with a bicycle.
And Kim and Susan at the Regional Planning Commission, we welcome you folks sharing it with whatever groups or organizations or interest groups that you have access to. It's a difficult demographic for us to reach for a study of this type. So any assistance that you folks can provide, you're welcome to share the information.
Sure, and I've got it on my website and on Facebook for us, but I mean, I have the same problem. It's a difficult population to reach, so yeah, I was hoping you actually had an answer.
One of the reasons that we have the project flyers, which are downloadable on the project website, are that if you know a particular location or population group that doesn't have internet access and isn't going to check your Facebook account or our website or read Twitter, that the project flyer is something that can be printed and handed out or printed and posted in a place that, I don't know, a town center, a town hall, grocery store, anywhere you think that someone might be able to get the information that otherwise wouldn't.
It might be an idea to. I don't think this is on.
Susan has a comment. Can you hear her?
To try to get it to maybe the food shelves around the state. And maybe that way some of those people could get the information.
Anything else from Rutland?
Did you hear Susan's comment just now?
We did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Springfield. No additional comments, thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Amanda in St. Albans.
I think we have one more comment.
You have the floor.
Jane again. I would like to comment on another area that I don't live in, but I do bike in. And it was regarding Johnson, and I'm not sure if anyone spoke up from Johnson or not. But I do bike the Route 15 from Johnson to Hyde Park, and that road there are no shoulders. The traffic goes really fast, and it was a very scary ride. So I wanted to just point out that area needs a little bit of work.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
You're welcome. White River Junction, Rita?
Hi, Amy. There are no comments from White River Junction.
Okay.
My coworker Sam from Randolph just texted me. She said that she's not offline, but there was, I guess, some sound technical difficulties. But there's no comments in Randolph.
Thank you, Rita.
Yep.
Williston?
Bob Mulcahy, thank you. Route 15 has been mentioned a few times. I think from the Jericho, Underhill, Cambridge area certainly needs to be resurfaced. And some of the resurfacing that they have done in prior years seems to peel up after 2 or 3 years. So I was just wondering what the specifications were on the projects so that they lasted a little longer. And then finally, we've talked about funding a number of times. With the gasoline price so low now, would this group consider our proposal to the legislature of maybe increasing the gasoline tax by a few cents in order to expedite the repaving and the repairs of bridges and roads in Vermont?
Kevin, would you like to handle that one?
I'll start with the first one. In terms of the specification, I'm not sure exactly where you're talking about, but familiar with Route 15. Many times we do have treatments that we put down that are really just Band-Aids, to be blunt about it. They're very low cost. I referenced earlier some costs of $150,000 to $250,000 per mile for some of our thin, full-width treatments. Some of the things that we do that we refer to as district paving, that's out of our maintenance districts, is even lower cost than that. And the idea is to just really just make make the surface as smooth as we possibly can until we can come through with a more robust project. So that may be indeed the case that you're seeing. Obviously, there are locations all around the state where the subsurface condition of the road is such that there's the presence of water and frost action. We don't get the life out of the pavements that we'd really like to without a much more expensive treatment. So there certainly with the projects that we put the investment in that I spoke to earlier, we do have some very stringent specifications on those treatments. But some of those lower cost treatments where we're really just trying to get a little bit of shape back in the roadway and smooth the surface, those are really just a very low cost maintenance type treatment. In terms of funding, I'm not sure that I'm really qualified to speak of whether or not we're pursuing a gas tax for these types of treatments, but certainly it's not part of this study, and there's not a plan at this time for that. So thank you for your comments.
We have a second presenter from Williston.
Yes, from Williston again, please. My name is Ian Stokes, and I live in Richmond. I serve on the Richmond Trails Committee, and in that capacity, I served on a steering committee for a scoping project that was funded by the Regional Planning Commission for a section of Route 2 in Richmond. So living on the west side of Richmond, personally, I use Route 2 a lot for coming into Burlington and also for on the west, from the west of Richmond to get into the center of Richmond. So Route 2 is my personal concern, but I think it feeds into an overall concern in Chittenden County for the arterial routes in and out of Burlington, which are heavily traveled and have the potential, if improved, to provide a huge benefit. So I have maybe 3 quick points to make. The first one is relating to criteria for prioritizing work done on state highways. And it would seem that Chittenden County is a case where we have high population density, we have high existing traffic patterns, and also it happens, and it happens many other places, I think, that there are very few alternatives. So if you want to get into Burlington from the east side, in my case, there's very little choice but Route 2. So the availability of alternatives would seem to be a factor that should be considered. Second point I'd like to make, I think has already been raised, is but putting numbers to it. The standard, I think, is 12-foot lanes, but a lot of situations actually have allowed 11-foot lanes consistent with traffic speed limits and visibility curves on the roads, things like that. So I hope that this project will keep that very much in mind, that this is an inexpensive or zero-cost option for improving shoulders and allowing equitable use of the available width of paving. Third point I have arose in our scoping project on Route 2 in Richmond. We eventually really hit we did hit a dead end because of a clash of right-of-way between the railroad and the state highway. This is a very narrow section with rivers and railroads and interstate and everything else. And it just happened that there's this section where without the railroad yielding some right-of-way, there was no way to gain additional traveling space on Route 2, and that really put a block on this, any possibility of making improvements on that section of Route 2. Somewhat related, I was discussing with colleagues actually at Bike Recycle Vermont this morning about this meeting, and two instances were raised in Chittenden County where bicycles are prohibited from state highways, not interstates, but to Route 289 from the River Road in probably in Essex or Jericho up to Essex has very generous shoulders, and those are not available to bicyclists. And furthermore, the gas pipeline was just put in that route, that part of the what was to be the Cirque Highway. So it would seem that an opportunity was missed while infrastructure work was being done adjacent to the state highway to put in a gas pipeline. It's probably unfortunate the opportunity has been missed to work with the gas utility or the gas pipeline company to make a bike lane or some other infrastructure improvements there. Also, the so-called beltway running north from the north side of Burlington is, I think it's state highway and is not available to bicyclists, as I learned one day when I was pulled over by a police cruiser, unaware of that fact. So the overall.
So if you could summarize, I'd appreciate it.
Just then to summarize those points. I hope that the state agency will attempt to work with utilities and other non-state public service agencies, such as companies such as railroad and gas companies, to make the most of the available rights of way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I think that you wanted to respond to one.
Just one point, Ian, and thank you for your comments. I believe we spoke on the phone before. In terms of striping the road at 11 foot versus 12 foot, that is something that's becoming more and more our practice. And within the last several years, I'm not going to say that it's been implemented in all projects. There's still some projects where we would stripe it at 12-foot lanes, but for the most part, we've been striping our lanes at 11-foot lanes, and we'll continue to do so. And probably you'll see that increase some over the next few years as well.
Thanks. Let's go to the web stream. A couple of questions from you, David.
Let's see. Does the term state road include Class 1 town highways?
The answer is yes.
For the purpose of this study.
For the purpose of this study.
There have been several areas of concern in Brattleboro. Route 9 Western Avenue is very discontinuous and in terms of safety and is not comfortable for bikes, pedestrians. And we get a lot of concern over the US 5 Putney Road, no crosswalks, but lots of businesses and hotels, and there are no sidewalks. There are some bike paths, but they could be better. And one more thing about Brattleboro is the master plan for Putney Road does include very good improvements for safety for both pedestrians and cyclists. When is VTrans planning to begin this project?
Do you know, Kevin?
I can't speak to the actual construction year for that project, but I do know we are very aware of the Putney Road master plan. We're also very aware of the components of that project that include bike and ped and considerations there, and those are that's a project that's looking at installing a series of roundabouts along Putney Road to also include bicycle and pedestrian accommodations as well. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact construction year right here with me today.
We're going to go back to Bennington. We had one last comment from Bruce, I believe, there, and then we'll be back to Williston. Hold tight.
Yes. Thank you. Following up on Ian's comment, anyone who has bicycled Route 7A between Arlington and Bennington would greatly prefer to ride on Route 7, though it is limited access. It seems to me that there would exist a possibility that bicycles be allowed to use that from exit to exit, and therefore would not have to cross any access roads. I don't know what policy applies here. This isn't an interstate highway. I do know that some states in the West, and I believe New Hampshire as well, have allowed bicycle travel on limited access highways. That's one. The second is that in relation to the striping, one of the worst challenges for me in bicycling is wherever there's a truck lane.
No, I think the sound is actually. Or you shut it off.
You got it right, Randolph. You're back online. Bruce, why don't you continue?
No, and actually Oh, no. No, that's fine. I've got a coworker in,
Sam, we can hear you.
Oh, now they can. Sorry about that.
All right, Bruce, why don't you continue in Bennington?
I'm sorry, I'll try to be brief. In terms of the striping, certainly that is one area where there's a low-cost option. It also seems to me that quite frequently where there is a truck lane, one loses one's shoulder because, of course, the roadway width is being used to supply a truck lane. This also causes interference with guardrails in addition to narrow shoulders. If the center line, and if I'm a cyclist, if I'm climbing as a truck is climbing, that's where I'm going to be passed most frequently because the speed differential is going to be the greatest. If the center line could be displaced to the downhill, toward the downhill side, you might still be able to have a full shoulder width on the uphill side where the speed differential for cyclists is the greatest. I only submit this as an idea for consideration. In other words, you'd be narrowing the shoulder on the downhill side in favor of creating more shoulder space on the uphill side, which is where the cyclist is going to face the greatest volume of truck traffic close by and the greatest speed differential. And finally, I'd like to say I also endorse greatly the interactive map. I think that was a great use of technology, and I appreciate your making that effort.
Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. Let's go back to Williston. I know we have some folks waiting there eagerly.
We on?
You're on.
This is Lou Brzee, Lake Champlain Bikeways. First of all, Amy, this is a great project, and thanks for your strategic work over the years to bring these things to the forefront. I want to talk briefly about shoulder treatment there and cite a good example. At the bottom of French Hill on Route 2 last fall, there was a section probably only 1.5 miles long that was, I'll call it repaved, but it was only 4 to 5 feet wide, but it was very, very smooth, and it was absolutely great. I didn't care that it wasn't painted with a nice white line. It was smooth and wonderful. Hope it'll last the winter, but that's the best shoulder treatment that I have seen. Let's take that same treatment and put it up on Route 7 north of Winooski, but in particular from Route 127 where Route 2A comes in out to Chimney Corners. This section going both ways is a key section, for Lake Champlain Bikeways, but it is the only way to get from Burlington up through to the islands if it's out of season for when the ferry goes across the cut. So I think it's a very key element. I know it's been on the map several times, but I wanted to reiterate it. Another very short, but it's been brought up to me on several occasions. If you are riding from Shelburne into Burlington, you have a wonderful bike lane where Route 7 was rebuilt, and it stops at Imperial Drive. And if somebody could take a 5-foot sidewalk, turn it into a 10-foot bike lane for 2 blocks, that would open up a much better approach into Burlington. And I know that some work has to be done, but that is all state right-of-way at this time. The third point that I want to make is to reiterate what's already been said. I was surprised somebody brought it up, but that was these limited access highways across the board. Does this study include those? I'm thinking Route 7 coming out of Bennington and the ones that were already mentioned.
Well, for purposes of the bicycle level of service, we've taken them out of the analysis. Whether there might be a recommendation that came out of this related to limited access roadways, that's certainly a possibility. So they're state highways. You know, the interstate system is off the map.
Understand that. I'll send it in electronically in size 32 type.
All right. Thanks, Lou. I see Abby's next.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm well.
So I'm Abby Matera, the State Safe Routes to School Coordinator, and I'd be remiss not to mention the importance of schools as we're talking about improving bike access along state roads. I would say the majority of the schools that I work with are directly on or directly off, right off of state roads, and they tend to say that is the biggest barrier to being able to bike to school because they feel like they don't have control to improve them. So I've shared this information with them, and hopefully you'll be getting some comments directly from schools. But I would say for on-street facilities, your middle and high school students would be key schools to look at. Those ages would be more comfortable for the on-bike facilities. And I would just encourage you when you're designing your facilities to design it for that 5th grader or that 6th grader, because we know if we design for our most vulnerable population, everybody will feel better on the facility. So that's my Safe Routes hat. To take it off and just talk about personally living in Burlington, I would say the 2 priorities would be to improve bike facilities on Route 7 into town from Williston, and then, Route 7 into town from Shelburne, and Route 2 into town from Williston. I think as far as traffic and levels that we're dealing with, we have so much traffic on those roads because there's not great options for people to get into town outside of vehicles. So I would stress that those 2 routes would see a lot of people on bike if the facilities were created. And I think often the bike is much faster than the cars because of the traffic. So I think there's two things. There's the demand, so you would see more bicyclists on bike facilities, and that it would alleviate some of the current congestion that we're seeing around town. So for priorities, I think those two are really should be held up on high priority because of our population and existing users of the roadway and interest as expressed by the group here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Abby. I'm going to stick with Williston, and we'll go back to the web stream one more time, but let's go to the next person in Williston.
Hi, Amy. Scott Hinman. I'm from Colchester. Two routes that have been mentioned previously that I ride quite a bit and are all but impassable on a road bike. Route 117 from the IBM complex, most of the way or all of the way out to Route 2 in Richmond. It's, again, traffic is moving very quickly. The shoulders have grass growing up through them. The cracks in the pavement where there are bridges are dangerous at best. There's one stretch just east of the IBM complex, and I'm not sure if it's town road or if it's state road, where not only is there grass growing up and the guardrails are falling into the river, but so's the road. And I'm actually riding 5 to 6 feet inside the white line just to have a surface smooth enough not to blow out a tire. The other section that Lou mentioned is Route 7 north of Colchester Village. I can't ride it anymore. If I want to ride up to the islands, I either park at the park and ride at the state garage, or I ride up through Milton and then come back down from Milton. I ride up on East Road out of Colchester to Milton and then back down Route 7 to get to Route 2 because it's a dangerous section. Even in a car, it pulls you over towards the ditch because the road is so broken up on the shoulder. And one last question / comment is part of this project. Is there any plans to do public outreach to the media as far as educating the general population about what the rules of the road are? I find that most of the close calls that I have, which are almost every ride that I take in Chittenden County, involve places where there is a wide shoulder, but you can't ride on it because of all the debris. So where there's a wider shoulder, cars give you less room, or you've got people honking at you even if you're not anywhere near the white line. So is there any kind of public outreach? You see the Share the Road bumper stickers, but is there something, I'm thinking along the lines of maybe what they do for state workers in construction zones or something like that, having people come in and say, look, I was hit, or my mom got hit, or my nephew got run over by a car, that kind of stuff.
Thanks, Scott. I'm going to ask John Kaplan to respond to your question about education and outreach on bike safety.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for that comment. And we do have it's not part of this project, but VTrans through the Bike and Ped program, we do have we certainly have safety education materials that we've had available for a number of years. And we just are sort of in the beginnings of a contract where an organization, Local Motion, which is a Burlington-based organization, but they are doing a statewide bike and pedestrian safety education program for us for the next couple of years. And part of that is to address some of the things that you're talking about, do more public outreach about, talking to motorists about how to safely share the road with bicyclists and pedestrians and get our materials out into the hands of the public. So hopefully you'll be seeing more of that as they sort of ramp up and get going.
Yeah, I find it's just an ignorance of what the actual law is in most cases. Most people don't understand what the actual rules are, and they have a driver's license.
Right. Just real quickly, two of the components of that statewide project are one is some education of law enforcement, so making sure that the law enforcement knows what the rules are and why they're important. And then another component is with the driver educators who are teaching, new drivers how to drive safely.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Scott. Do we have one more person, I believe, in Williston?
Williston. Yeah, my name's Cyril. Most of what I want to talk about has already been mentioned, so it's just a re-emphasis. I happen to go from Burlington to Essex Junction quite often. There's a health club there, and so I've got two sort of undesirable routes that I can go, either north through Winooski to Colchester through the Route 7 Sunny Hollow, which isn't really great, and then or what I most commonly do now is the Route 15 through Winooski and that corridor. I mostly tend to go back through St. Mike's and the Fort and avoid most of Route 15. But so that's an area that I think a lot of people are crying to get more access to, or at least would use if it was more bicycle pedestrian friendly. There was one comment, or a number of comments talked about how poor the conditions are north from Colchester on Route 7, and they talked about the only real access being the cut, and so that reminded me of my fantasy of having that cut made year-round 24/7 access, whether you put a tunnel in there or what you do. I'm not an engineer, but it seemed like that's such a key component to this round-the-lake jewel that's almost completed. Why not really do like they did with the bridge over the Winooski, or some sort of engineering joy where you could get across there? That's my comment. I guess quickly, lastly, another route I enjoy often is Spear Street south from Burlington. And even though it seems like it's a mecca or a highly used, often by, I guess, bicycle clubs, route, that there seem to be, and there are a fair number of wide shoulders on that route, and it's a really nice route. There seem to be some spots. I think it's probably right at the Shelburne line. I'm not sure where there's a. Any rate, it seems like it's such a wonderful, long, straight road that if it's such a well-known route, why couldn't it even be made greater, is my small comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I think now we'll just go to the web stream. David, do you have a couple for us?
One question is, when will be the last day for public comments on the project map?
The project map is open until, for comment and or addition of information, until February 14th. You have another one for us?
One person commented that frequently there's restriping done in the fall, which is at the end of the cycling season. So they prefer to see it done in the spring so that all the bike markings can be there at the start of the season.
Okay.
Starting this spring, we will be putting contracts out with at least not every route in the state, but with some provisions in there that lines have to be painted early in the season. So we are well aware of that for the safety of all users, and we're trying to emphasize that starting this coming year.
Go ahead, David. We've got about 5 more minutes.
All right. So far, all the input has come from people that bike. Are there plans to have input from commuting vehicle drivers?
Commuting vehicle drivers are welcome to provide input. We welcome input from all cyclists, regardless of why you cycle.
Or non-cyclists.
Or don't cycle.
Or don't cycle.
Then again, you can do both. You certainly can do both. If you're a non-cyclist, there's plenty of opportunity on the project map where there are things, you can add a point that's a problem area, and you can say, cyclists, get in my way. I mean, that's a perfectly acceptable and helpful bit of information for us to have.
One more from you, David.
Someone is wondering where they can access this video for people who are not able to attend today.
Yeah,
so they can see it.
The video for today's public meeting will also be posted on our website. It's probably going to take a couple of days to get there, but by the end of the week, you'll be able to find it at the VTrans website. That's part of the contact information sheet you should have received when you arrived at your venue, and will be projected up here shortly as we get towards the end. I want to check in with Middlebury because it looks like we might have one person in Middlebury who's decided they might want to speak. Am I correct?
You are not correct.
Oh, okay.
We're all set. We're all set. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And anyone left in Williston? I think we got all of you. I will. Williston, are we good?
Oh, yeah.
We're good, Amy. Chris, are we good?
We're all set. Thank you.
Okay, great. Before we get to closing the hearing, I do want to see if there's any last comment from any of the sites. And this could be scary. So speak up if you'd like to speak. I see one in Montpelier. Anybody else other than Montpelier? Webstream has more. Anybody else?
We have one more in Williston.
All right, let's get to Williston then.
I'm just reminded of the speed limit, and I realize that people have talked about speed on the roads. My particular happiness is the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit that's present in Burlington and Winooski, and also apparently is a number where bicyclists have a larger chance of surviving a hit from an automobile. So I'm just hoping that the reality of enforcement and considering those kinds of lowering speed options, how important that is for everybody's safety and health and happiness.
Thanks. Montpelier.
Yes, a quick mention of Route 302 between Montpelier and Barre. You know, the road diet, we all know about the bike lanes to be added on the perimeter of a section in Berlin, but down where that ends, there's a big gap from there to Barre. So it would be wonderful to complete that corridor by having bike facilities from the Barre line or from the old Ames Plaza into Barre City. Thanks.
Thanks, Phil. I think we have time for one more web stream question. David, you got one?
There's a question specifically. They'd like to see Western Avenue and Route 9 improvements. If it's
That would be in Brattleboro.
Brattleboro.
Yeah.
I want to make a comment that there is some data that has been censored on the web stream comments. One of them is, as the person probably saw, that in addition to Strava, another piece of censored data would be useful. So that type of information, if it was censored here, be sure to email that to the project email.
Okay.
And similarly, there are some other comments just about this road's important,
Yep.
and those will be noted
Yep.
in.
They
when
will
we do the
become a
notes.
part of the record
Yep.
of this event. Great. Thank you, David. Well, we've reached 3:55, which means we need to wrap this up. I just want to remind everybody, if we didn't get to your comments today, or you think of a comment the second you walk out of the door, feel free to contact us at the information. And again, it's on the overhead projector right now, and it should be. I'm hoping my site guy is going to project it for you. It also, all the contact information is both on the handout that should have been available at your site, and has also included many of the announcements that were sent out by a host of folks regarding this event. So please feel free to submit any comments. As I said, it's going to be open until February 14th for comments on this phase of the project. We're going to continue to ask you for comments for the other phases, but we just had to draw a line in the sand, at least for this phase of it, so we can move on to the next phase. So please do provide us with whatever information you think of. I think at this point, we've completed what we need to complete. So I'm going to close the public meeting. And thank you all for coming out. Have a great afternoon and safe travels. Thanks again.
Very much for taking me to be on a committee.